So we're going to kick off the second last panel of the day, and post this, we've got a fireside chat. So for our SaaS panel, I'd like to welcome Shashank from Spotdraft, India's leading and actually a globally leading contract management provider. We've got Gaurav from SaaS Labs. Welcome, Gaurav. And we've got Manish from Hevo Data. Shashank from Spotdraft is going to be the moderator, so that you guys don't have to keep hearing from us. It's over to you, Shashank. Thank you.
So right before this panel, I was looking up how many SaaS companies out of India selling to the India-US corridor have crossed that magical 10 million mark, and it's roughly about 20 companies that are in that 10 to 50 range, and 10% of that population today is on the stage between Manish and Gaurav. So it's an incredibly tough, unique, and differentiated journey that takes them there. So I'm really excited as a SaaS founder who's still a little behind in that journey. I'd love to dig in a little deeper and get to know. Gaurav, your previous background was at PinPuff, Hello Society, more sort of B2C rather than B2B. And Manish, you were at Spoonjoy, that was acquired by Grofers, which is Blinkit now. Again, a pure B2C story. Can you describe your initial journey, specifically how you went around validating the problem and coming up with Hevo Data or SaaS Labs as the solution to it? So if you want to go first, Manish.
So I think when you start the company for the first time, there are a lot of fanciful things that attract you. But when you do it the second time, you realize that just an interesting problem, just the VC money, just a big opportunity is not good enough. I think for me, it was like you got to have an internal conviction, because you realize how incredibly hard the journey can become as an entrepreneur, and that payoffs have to be beyond the money or just the company success. You have to derive some personal satisfaction. And then in that quest, you figure out that if you could solve only one problem in your entire life, what would that problem be? So instead of sort of like applying a VC framework of evaluating an opportunity, my personal journey was more around what problem would you care about solving the most, even if the financial outcome was not great. And then I figured that what I'm passionate about, which is more around using data to make scientific decisions or just approaching decision making in a scientific way. And that's how that journey led one thing to the other. And I ended up like picking up a problem that at large, how do you make people more scientific in their thinking? And that's how this whole concept of data integration, etc., that how do you make data available became like very weird and not a recommended framework. It's very personal. So incidentally, we happened to kind of land on a good problem, which turned out to be much bigger in terms of opportunity size than what we originally thought to be. So a lot of serendipity, I would say.
That's amazing. And Gaurav, was it serendipity for you as well, or was it a well thought out journey?
Sure. No, definitely I'll tell you the story. And by the way, before PinPuff and Hello Society, I'm a chemical engineer, and before that I used to play cricket, so nothing to do with SaaS, for sure, right? So I think but I picked up programming very early. I was, I think, in 9th class when I started writing code and started making some money here and there online. But it was, so I think for the first time I figured that software is an amazing opportunity in general. I think it was 2011, 2012 when I sold my first company, which was into analytics space. And that's when I moved to US for the first time, I figured people pay for software, which was so awesome. Because back in India, I did my BTech from NIT Warangal, and you can just download anything from the internet for free of cost, right? So in US, it was like so cool that you are the programmer, you write thing, and people buy that. SaaS was still not there, right? I think 2015, when I moved back to India after almost scaling the last business I was running, I thought that, can I make like $4,000-5,000 a month back in India so that I can move back to India? So what I did, I created a fake identity in the name of Alex and created very tiny tools for Shopify and Etsy. And those tools became like, they grew to almost $500,000 in recurring revenue. So that gave me a high confidence that you can actually build anything from anywhere and sell across the world. So that was the starting point for me from a SaaS point of view. Coming to the idea for SaaS Labs, I had already sold 2 companies. So this time around, I was thinking that I have to build something which I can run forever and probably outlive me. And going back to my previous experience of moving to US, there were two insights that I got apart from people paying for software. One was SMBs are super underloved, and the agents, the sales and support agents are again super loved. So that became a thesis for me that if I have to build a company for next 30, 40 years, and I have to go IPO, so the first line in our prospectus will be like SMBs and these agents are super underloved and we have to solve for them. So that became the thesis and the DNA of the business. That's what we have been doing for the last 8 years.
So that's amazing. So you come back, you start building these smaller tools, and then the eventual idea of SaaS Lab comes, and then you're sitting here in India, which is a large market, but also a market where people are used to downloading a software for free and not really paying for it. How did you evaluate between, hey, let me sell in India first and validate the market and then go to the US versus let's just go to the US straight up? Like, what was your journey through, evaluating that, and what did you actually end up doing?
Sure. Uh, no, I think this is nothing against India, so this is my favorite song, but selling in India is a big pain. And I learned this thing when I was building my first business was when I was in college. So I built this product for Twitter advertising before Twitter advertising actually came out. We had scale in India, like we were having like 10,000 advertisers on our platform, every XYZ, everything, but I never made money per se because people are not just paying. And if you have to charge someone like 750 rupees, like $10 or something, you have to like send an invoice to Mumbai and then T plus 60, they'll clear the payment, right? So I think it was a big pain for me to make any money there profitably. So from that learning, it became very clear that India is still behind from the whole software buying journey. So it was pretty clear that you build from India and sell across the world. I think that's the best model even today. I would say like it's still pretty painful. I mean, you are selling in India. I think you're also selling in India, but not for us. Like 1% of our revenue comes from India.
Yeah, I mean, it so happened that it was the same problem, the same buyers and same product, so it worked out. But I agree, selling in India is infinitely tougher than.
I mean, you have to sell it at SMB cost, but you have to give an enterprise service, right? So that will never make profit.
Yeah, agreed. What about you? How did you, Manish, go about it? Did you sell in India first at all?
Yeah, actually no. So few things led to that decision. I think one thing important was, again, goes back to the core reason of starting up again, was like, what's the ultimate thing that you want to achieve by building a company again? And to me, it was like, can you actually build technology products in India which will win as like, or turn out to be the #1 player in your category in the globe? So a majority of India SaaS, when we were starting, were more like a cost advantage model, which is obviously great because we have that advantage and we should leverage that advantage. But my thought process was that what would SaaS 2.0 will look like? And my thesis was that kind of things will go pretty flat pretty quickly, and that advantage of India may not really be there for all the time, because soon enough people will figure out that you can actually set up bases in India and that advantage will go away. So what's advantageous field right now in future will go away. So you have to plan for that, and it will be a level playing field. So to me, it was very clear, if you cannot win against your global competitor in their home turf, you are basically playing a flanking strategy. So you will pick up only what's left. And to me, it was very clear that, I mean, it goes back to my college days. So I used to tell my parents that, like, either I'll go to a law school or an engineering school. If I don't get in a top engineering school, then I got to go to top law school. And if I don't go to both of them, then I'll figure out what to do in life. So it was very clear that you got to win in US. And that's like more of a personal pride more than anything else. The second aspect to kind of support this thesis was the bunch of founders before us who started SaaS. and who kind of didn't really find a lot of success in the US, but were doing well in the markets outside. I ended up talking to few of those founders, and some of them actually very clearly articulated um, that, look, the two markets are entirely different. Like, it's, think of like a car. So in India, the set of, I mean, at a fundamental, you will think it's the same product. That what is the purpose of a car? It's basically transfer people from one place to the other in a safe and reliable way. But if that were to be true by that definition, you would see the same brands and the same models selling in the US and India. The number of cars that get sold and the models that get sold in the two countries, I mean, there is no single model which sells at both places except for a few German cars. So each market is very different. The way people are brought up, the reason why would they use something is entirely different. So if you go to a gas station in US, there you don't have anyone filling up the gas. Now, even in that situation, when you compare the same mental model in India, people are used to kind of going to a petrol pump and someone filling up. And that simple nuance changes a whole bunch of things. So if you're building a product for India market, then you will say that, who is going to read my documentation? All that the customer will say that, hey, come on a call, show me a demo, implement this. Whereas a customer in US, if you're paying, let's say, $5,000, they don't expect you to come on a call. So what you will invest on your product will be very different. If you're selling for the global market, you are going to be focused on seltzer, documentation, polish, whereas in India, you got to build a huge services layer around that. So that thing was, the takeaway message for us was, the two are going to be two different companies altogether. So whatever company you build in India, you will not be able to take the same product to the next market. Either you are building for US, and then obviously you can sell to some segment of India as a market, or you build for India or whatever geography you can, but you will struggle a lot to take it to US because the same set of offering and the value prop will no longer work. And your moderate success in India as a market will be your biggest barrier if you're trying to sell to the US market, because the same set of customers for the same use case will not buy, and your team will say that, no, you're probably talking to the wrong set of customers because this product works over here. That kind of becomes a barrier.
Yeah, interesting. In fact, when we hit our first $1 million, we still felt like we hadn't gotten product market fit because we had some money coming in from India and some money coming in from the US, and we had to almost do that twice over again. But so you're in this journey where now you've figured out, okay, let's spend in rupees, earn in dollars, right model. And I'm imagining you had a slide like mine when you went to investors which said, this is the TAM slide, and it's a pie chart where 90% of your TAM is available in the US, but number of customers in the US at that point are 0, right? So talk to me a little bit about that 0 to 1 journey, right? And I'm assuming that you had competitors already in your space. So how did you go about differentiating yourself during that process?
Yeah, so our first fundraise was pretty much based on our past credentials, and the set of questions that so after we closed our seed round, we were asking people that, and just right after we closed the round, we said that, we went to some set of investors and said that, if 12 months later, if you were to evaluate this company for investing, tell me what are the top 3 reasons why would you not invest in this? And say that people will build this solution on their own. And like the way our solution worked, that the data had to go on the cloud, and it was all like financial data, their operational data. So why would anyone would want to send their data, right? And will you be able to sell in the US? So those were the top 3 questions that will be the sort of barrier for us to decide whether to invest in this company or not. And we said that, okay, now all we are going to do is find all our customers who meet all the 3 criteria. So criteria was that all our large customers are going to be based on not just US, but West Coast. Because if a company in Silicon Valley is not going to build their software and are going to buy from you, it's like selling ice to Eskimos, because they want to build most of the things on their own. So if you're selling to one of the companies over there or few companies over there, it demonstrates that it doesn't make sense for companies to build on their own. The second aspect was, if you could sell to a financial sector who is willing to send the data to the cloud through your infrastructure, that will prove the third thing. And obviously, selling into the US. So we categorically went after picking those ones to actually de-risk or mitigate the questions that could prevent this business from growing. So it was all sort of like, because when you're starting for the second time, you're actually very paranoid. You're like, if this company is going to shut down, I want this company to shut down today rather than 3 years later. So you are trying to de-risk your business by trying to identify what could potentially kill this, and let me face it and encounter it early in the journey rather than later in the journey.
Got it. And Gaurav, how about you? Like, what was that 0 to 1 journey? And I'm assuming it's a lot of founder-led sales, but what did
Sure.
you do, and what was really the differentiator when you looked at competition?
Sure. No, similar to Manish, like we also raised capital when we were at, I think, at about 5 or 6 million ARR. We were a bootstrap company before that. And because, so I decided to bootstrap the company from day 0 because the idea was to take the company public, right? And in India back in 2016, only profitable companies were going public. So it was pretty clear to me that I have to create a profitable company here. And decided to sort of bootstrap because there are a lot of VCs here, right? So that's fine. So I think 0 to 1 journey was pretty clear that we had all engineers in our team, and we didn't have any marketing or sales people in our team. So we had to figure out a $0 distribution channel for ourselves. And so we started thinking about like what are some of those $0 distribution channels for us. So the first one was integration with other business tools, because some of the bigger companies in the market, you can just ride the tide and just use their popularity to get some visibility for your business. I think that's the best way to go 0 to 1. Use someone else's popularity, be visible everywhere where your customers are hanging out. So that was one. Second one, obviously, a lot of people are actually not using it. I'm very surprised. Like SEO is a pretty big 0 to 1 lever for every single SaaS business where there's some piece of demand. So we use these two levers in our case. And the first 500 demos were sort of given by me and a couple of our senior early engineers. And another thing which is really important, not just 0 to 1, but the whole of the life of the SaaS company is like providing amazing customer support. I think that's an unfair advantage Indian companies can use. Because a lot of customers who were joining us in the early years, they were all talking about that, how can you give us replies so fast in 5 minutes, like our other companies are like giving us replies in 3 days. So that became a really good differentiator for us as a customer support. So we started putting customer support in our features page. That customer support is one of our features. It will never go down the way our product doesn't go down, right? So I think that worked really well for breaking customers from different competitors that we had. So these are like more tactical-ish things that we did. So it took us about 18 months to go to 0 to 1 doing these.
Incredible. And so that's the 0 to 1 journey, and then people usually say there's the 0 to 1 journey and 1 to 10 journey, but in my head, every time we go from 0 to 1, the 1 resets to 0, and the things that worked 0 to 1 don't work again from 1 to 3 or 3 to 5. What changed and what remained constant across that 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and now you're like more like towards the 30 side of things? What are certain things that remain constant no matter what, and things that you need to keep an eye out and keep rapidly iterating as you scale?
No, I think till 5 mil, it's still kind of the same. I mean, that's my take. Till 5 mil, it's still the same. You just have to double down on what's working. Because once you're at 0 to 1, then the 2 million should ideally come faster than the 18 months, whatever period took you to 1 month. And if you're doing that, you're on the you're in the right direction. Just keep on doing that. No need to reinvent anything for you. But I think what changes, like obviously your team becomes bigger. So as a CEO, founder, if you're not growing faster than the company and understanding how the people function sort of works, or building the team itself, because 0 to 1 is all these people who are mission driven with you and everything. But when you start hiring the new layers of people, I think that's where you can actually lose the plot. So it's really important, how can you work as a founder on maintaining the culture and the intensity of the business, because 5 million, 10 million is still a pretty early stage for the business. You should not be like very hands off in that stage. So it's very important for a founder to be that. Second is like you have to start building a lot of internal tools for your business so that you can keep a track of a lot of functions happening. You have to do a lot of automation around all the operations which are happening, because what's going to happen is that $10 million, which is about 80 crores, it's a decent amount of money, and you have a bunch of customers. If you're an SMB mid-market customer, then you must be having like 3,000 customers or whatever. So make sure that you're parallelly building those structures in your business which will handle all the risks which are coming across with scale. So I think that's really important. I think what remains same, I mean, you're going to hate me for the answer, but he said me not to mention that because it's a very obvious answer, like customer focus. I mean, that should never change. But that's actually very true, because funny story, I mean, I don't know how many PMs are in the room, but we hired our first PM when we were 15 million ARR, because I didn't know what PMs do. So what happens, like, when your team start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and if you're a product founder, you will feel that the kind of focus you used to give on the customer relationships, that becomes very weak, right? And you have to make sure that focus on the customer is still that strong and intense. I think it's really important. So I couldn't think of any other answer. Sorry for that. Yeah.
No. Thanks, Gaurav. So Manish, yes, we know it is customer focus that remained the constant, but what really changed from that, from 0 to 1 to 1 to 10, or is it more of a 0 to 5 journey that remained the same for you, like Gaurav?
I think if you reflect last 6 months and you don't feel like stupid, you're not growing fast enough. Every 6 months, when you look back your past 6 months, and you feel like how dumb I was. If that's not happening, you're not growing fast enough. So I think there are few things, right? First of all, I mean, we obviously like celebrate all small milestones, but like all the businesses who are like 10, 20, 30, 50 million are actually not, like, if you look at from a global perspective, there are still new kids on the block. Like, unless you kind of get to closer to 100 million, you're not a real business in some sense. And I think being paranoid about your right to win in the market is very important, because in a super early stage, your product is not very deep, you found some niche, you're growing, but what your startup is could just be a product for some other larger company, or it could just be feature for some other company. So you're almost like, you always have to be paranoid that what is our right to win and how are we going to stay ahead of the game, I think, which is very important. The second aspect, which is I feel most important aspect, is that as you grow, how do you stay away from bad advice? I think a lot of founders just don't grow well enough because they don't trust their instinct, and they trust a lot of advice which doesn't come from a lot of context. Just to give you an example, a lot of times you will hear this perspective that once you hire senior folks, you should like take a back seat, enable them, and like let the magic happen and all that stuff up. I think that is a BS advice, because like you have to be in the trenches. You cannot ever take your eyes off execution. So I wish CEO was the chief execution officer, where you have to be obsessively focused about executing. If you are not obsessively focused about execution, you will suddenly wake up one day and reflect back that, oh, I hired a bunch of smart people and we've just become dumber as a company. So that maintaining that DNA, I think, is very important, and it's a very contradictory advice.
Yeah.
I can add like a couple of things that now I remember. I actually did some exercise after you said that not to say the customer thing, right? I think kind of connected to what Manish said, it's like we normally have this saying in our company, which is like optimistic paranoia. For every single leader, you have to be very optimistic in front of your people, but you have to be also worried that what can go wrong tomorrow. I think so that optimistic or paranoia is very important. I think the second one is more like how to keep the sanity of the brains. It's like peace, patience, perseverance. I think these three things are really important and should remain constant as you grow. Let's say if you're touching 30, I mean, even at $100 million, we should have that peace, patience, perseverance with us. And there's another saying that in our company, which has remained very constant, is you are only an email away from a good news. So that keep people excited and pushing all the time. So I think these three things, at least in SaaS Labs, has remained pretty constant from 0 to 30.
I like it's peace, perseverance, and patience.
So that's what my dad gave me when I was miserably failing my first startup.
Got it. Yeah, amazing. So here we are now. There is this massive unit working out of India where there is execution to be done there, and there is execution on ground in the US doing sales. How do you split that team? Where do the teams sit, and especially on the GTM side? Because here we are sitting and talking cricket, and we are selling to people where they're talking the Super Bowl. Like, how do you bridge that gap, and what does that GTM setup for you look like?
I can take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think to solve that problem of cricket versus baseball or whatever, I think you need to get a PMM who is in US largely. I mean, that's my strategy. Like anything, I mean, as Manish calls it, like, I mean, I'm just stealing your words, like the head remains in US and the body is in India, right? I think that's what Manish normally talks about. So in our case, like we have been largely a PLG focused company, and now we have a SLG motion going on. So it's product-led growth and sales-led growth. Majority of, or the whole of our sales team sits in India today. Like we have AEs and SDRs and BDRs all sitting in India. Although they're working in different time zones, but they all still are selling from India. We do have a leadership, sales and marketing leadership and partnership in US sitting. So anything where you need some sort of touch, some sort of influence of someone being local, I think that's where we're investing. But other than that, like I think thanks to the communication skills Indians normally have on the English side, I think it's working well for us. As and when we go more focused on the European sort of markets, about 25% of our business come from Europe. We'll be probably hiring specific language sort of skilled people in Europe. Although we acquired our company a couple of years back in Europe, so I think that's also helping us out. So we have about 28 people in Poland sitting today, so that's helping us with our European sales a bit.
Got it. And is that a similar setup? The sales team sitting out of, some of the sales folks and PMM sitting out of the US and rest of the body in India?
Yeah, I think this is more of an architectural choice rather than like something that can be replicated. I think there are a few things which of course can be replicated is any problem, like most slowdowns I see in SaaS or even in our case has been that we couldn't foresee a problem. And if you don't foresee, and everything takes a time. So if you think you need someone, if the need is so obvious and evident to you, and then you get started on a new hire, you are probably 6 to 9 months already late into it. So knowing what would you need 6 to 9 months down the road, I think is a superpower or your basically way to safeguard or it's an insurance to your growth. Because most slowdowns are because you don't really have the right person in the building. And more often than not, you will not get your first hire for any new domain right the first time. So that is something that we think if you hire people who've seen the movie before few times with the right mindset, right? So like a lot of people who will feel like they've seen movie before or they've basically taken the road before, you got to figure out that were they driving or were they on a co-driver seat, because that is very hard to distinguish because both persona can actually describe scenario very well. One knows how to drive, one knows how it gets driven. So that I think is the first and foremost thing consideration when you think about the design choices in the US. The second aspect is what is your ASP or ACV? Yep. So that plays a huge role because if you're selling into an enterprise, you just don't have a choice. Your customer, like how you sell is not determined by you. How you sell is determined by how your customer wants to buy. So you have to understand for your price point, your buyer, the other set of products that they are buying of similar complexity, how are they buying those solutions, and your go-to-market has to fit into their buying model. It doesn't matter whether you want to call yourself PLG, SLG or XYG. It doesn't really matter. You have to look at their buying process and fit your model into that, and ASP is the most important factor in that consideration.
Interesting.
I think one thing is one is the stage of the business as well. Like if it's an early stage business and planning to do an enterprise sale, then you should not hire a salesperson in US and that's going to solve the problem. In that case, the founder will have to do the first few sales, right? So it's so hiring a person in US will mostly never solve the problem unless you have the right systems in place. I think we should also understand like the difference between working style of how the Indian workforce works and how the other country workforces work. So I think that's also great lessons to sort of ask around other founders.
Yeah, I have a ton of follow-up questions, but I know we are coming up on time. So 30 seconds each. 3 things that you want the audience to take away right after this conversation. People who are either trying to invest in the business or who are building from India to the US, SaaS businesses. Quick takes. Manish, do you want to go first?
Um, I don't think I have 3, I just have 1. Um, talk to a lot of founders who've seen this before. And I think like a lot of times we've done that late and realized that the problems that we were trying to make a mountain of the mole were a very simple thing had we spoken to the right set of people. So having that learning mindset, and this is like a little bit of a, um, uh, like you have to be vulnerable in some sense. You have to go with the mindset that every new person that you will meet can teach you something. So you may be at 20, 30 million ARR, but there is some smart person who is either ahead of the game or has figured something, who has got less resources. How are they doing it? So that learning mindset, I think, is the most important thing if you want to continue grow. So that's just one thing that I kind of want to highlight as a most important thing one should really fixate on.
Yeah. And Gaurav, 30 seconds.
I think from the hiring perspective, don't go for logos or previous experience. Go for like natural abilities. This is something I learned from Manish only. Second is on the pricing piece. I mean, normally as Indian businesses, we try to play some bit of pricing game, but then that's not sustainable for the longest period of time. So make sure whatever your heart is saying, just 4x that number and just put it on your pricing page. And probably spend more than 30 minutes on your pricing page, because that's a lot of companies spend only that much amount of time on the pricing page. You have these 3 boxes, put a price, that's it. More goes into packaging and everything, right? So I think that's one. And the last one would be like bootstrap for the longest period of time. Only once you have a machine that can sustainably and predictably generate more money by inputting more money, then only you raise capital.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. This was so insightful. Gaurav, Manish, thank you so much for your time. If people have more questions, they're around. Feel free to reach out to them and have a chat. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Shashank.
Thanks, bro.